The Algonquians are the largest indigenous North American group, known for residing along the Atlantic coast by the St. Lawrence River surrounding the Great Lakes. And the Wendigo is an evil spirit that originated in the Algonquian folklore. The concept of the Wendigo has been widely used in many areas, such as art, literature, horror fiction, and social issues. Stephen King's Wendigo draws inspiration from the Algonquian story, and its origin is attributed to a Native American tribe based in East Canada, northeast of America, known as the Micmac tribe. Let's get a deeper, more detailed view of this evil being. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Hundreds of years ago, it was used in a very different way.
Who is Wendigo? What is his backstory? A primal demon works as the supporting villain in Stephen King's mythos known as the Wendigo, whose basic job is to terrorize the native tribes such as the Algonquians, the Micmacs, and other indigenous North American tribes. Wendigo is also the antagonist to Curse's Pet Sematary, a story written by Stephen King. It's also said that the origins of the Wendigo could be from the ancient Greek religious mythology about the three Moirai, who were three sisters, namely Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos, representing the spinner, the allotter, and the inevitable. The role of the Moirai was that of a watchdog, to ensure every living being lived as per their respective destiny, given to them by the universe. Each life was like a thread in a spindle. Wendigo, too, has its links with death, who is known to snip the thread that holds human life prematurely. Therefore, its functions are tied with the Tropos. The Wendigo habitation area expanded through the entire northern hemisphere of North America, around Canada, and dominated every creature and organism under his purview. During his lifetime, the Wendigo was involved with the Micmac burial site in Ludlow, Maine, where the Wendigos took over. At some point, the Wendigo left a curse at the Micmac burial ground, making an ancient curse design, as if encasing the area. As per the curse, any corpse buried there would be reanimated within 24 hours and would turn into a cannibal. When the Micmac realized the curse was real, they escaped from such a hideous place and left a little before the 1820s when other forms of settlers arrived. Later, this burial ground was close to a pet cemetery that future children in the town would use.
A lesson you can only learn in Ludlow.
Role of Wendigo in Pet Sematary novel. The story follows the Wendigo's curse on the Micmac burial ground. Any corpse buried would not only get reanimated within 24 hours, but also be converted into a violent murderous form of their former selves, i.e. before death, or become cannibals. Back in colonial times, there was a large white European settlement on Ludlow. For the longest time, the Wendigo hovered about in hiding, controlling the events of the town. The pet cemetery situated in Ludlow, Maine, which was the newly reclaimed Micmac burial ground, came under the control of the Wendigo, who used his necromantic skills to reanimate the animals buried there, be it cats, bulls, or dogs. They were all revived into a murderous creature. During World War II, the attraction toward the cemetery became stronger. When a soldier named Timmy Baderman was killed in Italy, his body was shipped back to his father, who laid him in the same possessed cemetery, the Micmac burial ground. As per the curse, Timmy returned home to his father in his reanimated form under the evil influence of the Dark Wendigo. Tim's aggression didn't go unnoticed amongst the townspeople, including Judd Crandall, who was a victim of the Wendigo's evil doings. As a kid, Judd Crandall, a resident, lost his dog and buried it at the cemetery. He revived it, and despite his father, who knew about the cemetery, warning him about the repercussions, Judd turned a deaf ear. As per the rule, the reanimated animals were far more antagonistic and attacked strangers. The revived ones would live for roughly 10 years and die again. Judd and the other residents repeatedly demanded Tim's father make things right and relieve the town of the evil influence, but he didn't believe them. Tim's father found his son fine, also because Mr. Baderman was ill. Tim, who was under the dark and evil influence of the Wendigo, revealed the secrets of the town's men, who had come to warn his father. The vindictive Wendigo set out hearing this, and scared the men till they had no choice but to flee. That night, after seeing the situation unfold and realizing his neighbor's warnings were true, he shot his son and set his house on fire after shooting himself. The doctor who came to examine the bodies was shocked to note that Tim had been dead for weeks, seeing the extent of decomposition of his body, and this confirmed the influence of the Wendigo's necromantic powers, that only reanimated the corpse but couldn't revive the dead tissue. In another instance, Lewis Creed, a doctor from Chicago, moved to the University of Maine's campus as he had gotten the job of the campus director of health services. He shifted to a house near Ludlow with his family, comprising his wife Rachel, their two young children, Gage and Ellie, and their pet cat, Church. short for Winston Churchill. Their elderly neighbor, Judd Crandall, warned Lewis and Rachel about the speeding trucks that ran past the highway near their house. Before the highway, it was a small road that used to transport crops to the market. But later, due to modernization and the use of automobiles, the road widened and became a highway. This highway was deadly since it posed a danger to the families living on either side of the road. Numerous deaths had occurred due to speeding truck drivers running over victims. It's also believed that since the highway passes through the Wendigo-dominated area, the Wendigo has some power over the speeding truck drivers who commit the accidents. Drivers have admitted that they felt like stepping on the gas and accelerating while passing Ludlow, as if something had come over them, thereby causing the deaths of reckless animals and children. This is why the residents created the pet cemetery, which the town's children managed. Judd, the doting fatherly neighbor, became close with Lewis and his family. One day, he took the family on a walk in the woods, far away from their home, on a manicured path leading to the pet cemetery, which was wrongly spelled as cemetery. The children of the town managed the cemetery. While Lewis found the place appealing, Rachel was disturbed since her sister Zelda had a traumatic death when they were kids, and the graveyard felt daunting to her. While on campus, Lewis went to attend to a student victim seriously injured in a car accident. The student in question, Victor Pascal, mouthed a few incomprehensible words to Lewis before dying. They seemed words of warning about an impending threat. Right after this incident, Lewis had disturbing dreams of Victor leading him to a forbidden area in the back of the pet cemetery, warning him going beyond this point would mean entering a danger zone. Lewis would wake up in a cold sweat, finding his feet soiled with mud and pine needles. As days passed, during Thanksgiving, Church, Ellie's cat, was run over on the highway. At that time, Rachel and the children visited Rachel's parents in Chicago. Lewis didn't know how to break the news to Ellie since he knew she would be devastated. Judd took Lewis to the dreaded pet cemetery without knowing about the curse that haunted it. They buried Church, but at a place beyond the point that Victor had warned him about. Church gets buried in the real cemetery as per Judd's instructions. Within 24 hours, the next afternoon, Church returns but with a new, aggressive, eerie personality. Church's docile self was replaced by that of a restless hunter, leaving traces of his hunted dismembered victims for Lewis to find. On their return, Ellie found Church stinking and refused to take him back. And here's when Judd confesses to Lewis that Church had been resurrected due to the curse, and tells him about what happened to his dog named Spot when he was a kid. This confession leaves Lewis deeply disturbed, wishing he hadn't listened to Judd. After several months, Lewis' youngest child, 2-year-old Gage, was killed by a speeding truck on the same highway. Overcome with grief and desperation, Lewis is tempted to resurrect his son in the same way that Church was brought back to life. Judd coerced him not to succumb to that attraction, and narrated the story of Timmy Baterman and his fate. Judge kept reminding him that whoever returned wasn't the same human, but a demon possessed by the Wendigo. Judd even adds that sometimes being dead is better since the burial ground, for obvious reasons, was evil due to the Wendigo's influence. He pleads with Lewis to come to terms with Gage's death, but Lewis was too affected by it, and despite knowing the dangerous consequences, he decided to go ahead. He first sent Rachel and Ellie back to Chicago to Rachel's parents, and then exhumed Gage's body and took him to the cursed pet cemetery. On the way, Lewis saw the Wendigo and dodged his presence. The Wendigo watched Lewis since he knew what he was about to do. He saw Lewis bury the body of Gage again so that it could be reanimated. While at her parents' home, Ellie has nightmares, so Rachel returns to their Ludlow home. The resurrected Gage, far different from his child form, gets access to Lewis' scalpels, with which he slits Judd's throat and then kills Rachel. Lewis finally figures out how he had been manipulated with grief and desperation, that he kills both Gage and Church by injecting them with a lethal dose of morphine. Since he had killed Gage and Church, the Wendigo no longer had a body it could use as a medium to spread fear and conduct necromantic tactics. Lewis, who by now had gone insane with grief, burned down Judd's home, after which he returned to the cursed pet cemetery with his wife's body, hoping that if he buried his wife's freshly murdered body, then the results on the reanimation wouldn't be so heinous. Steve Masterton, who was Lewis' colleague, saw him as he disappeared into the woods with Rachel's body. In the end, when Lewis sits indoors, all by himself, playing a game of solitaire, he finds someone placing a hand on his shoulder. When he turned, it was Rachel. She killed him that night. While the pet cemetery was a story of Wendigo's supremacy over helpless victims and their destruction, but another story by Stephen King titled The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon gave me hope that the mighty Wendigo could be dodged if not defeated. In The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, a young girl named Trish gets separated from her family when they're out hiking, partly because her brother is fighting with her mother mother about her divorce from their father. She stepped back and couldn't catch up with them. She further got separated from them when she took a bathroom break. Lost, all she had in her hiking bag was a tuna sandwich, some drinks, a Walkman, and a Game Boy. She put her Walkman on to listen to the baseball game since her favorite player, Tom Gordon, was playing, and the game would keep her spirits high as she tried to find her way out. Meanwhile, her family filed a missing persons report. A few hours passed and then turned into days, and Trisha was so lost that she had nervous breakdowns, which the Wendigo watched and took advantage of, intending to make her its next victim. As she tried to find her way back to her family, the Wendigo petrified her by leaving scary remnants of his kills, such as a mutilated deer and other omens. Unbeknownst to Trish, 3 supernatural messengers showed up to meet her in the woods. One was the Subaudible, a god that her family worshipped. The second messenger was someone who had taken the form of her science teacher. The third one was the Wendigo posing as the prophet of the god of the lost. The god of the lost reminded Trish that she shouldn't resist the attraction of the Wendigo, since he was irresistible and she would succumb eventually. Trish was even threatened, saying that if she resisted its influence, she would meet death. Trish fought all of these visions and escaped from the forest. She found a way out of the forest to the motorway with her conviction and will. Hoping she'd reach the 9th base of her game, i.e. the end of her being lost, the Wendigo attacked her in the form of a grizzly bear. But Trish remembered how Tom Gordon would make the final pitch in the 9th inning of the game, so she used all her might and hurled the Walkman at the bear, who was shaken by the impact. Just before the bear, Wendigo, could attack her again, a hunter shot at the bear, making it retreat immediately. Trish was rescued while the Wendigo waited in the woods for more victims. The role of Wendigo on the big screen. Pet Sematary was made into a movie in 2019, and the plot followed the book's main premise, keeping the Wendigo as the main source of dark influence that pervades the titular cemetery. The makers didn't hold back from presenting the Wendigo, explicitly warranting an effective presence in the narrative connected to the curse and haunted burial ground. While in the book, Lewis Creed only gets a subtle glimpse of the Wendigo when he carries the body of his infant son for resurrection to the ancient burial ground. But in the movie, the horror of the scene comes to life when the Wendigo makes Lewis feel his presence, literally. As Lewis walks past the little god swamp, the mist spreads like a cloud and teases, showing a silhouette of a towering monstrous spirit, the Wendigo. The presence and the sight could put the best horror scenes to shame. What's amazing is that Lewis only got a fleeting glimpse before the Wendigo vanished. He knew he had seen something horrific, but didn't know what. Imagine seeing the murderer of your child, but not understanding the depth of the crime or logic. It's terrible as well as poignant. The Wendigo as an entity, appearance, goals, abilities, and personality. The legendary author Stephen King describes his appearance in the novel as a grotesque-looking character who's a demon from ancient times. His horrific laugh comes from a face that's always tilted upward, with yellow-gray eyes that gleam. His mouth is stretched downwards in a rictus that holds his blackish-brown pointed long lips and decaying teeth, covering a white worm beneath them. His ears look like ram horns. His see-through veins pulse through his lips, and his nostrils flare to release white vapors. The Wendigo's personality seemed like that of a punisher who was out to get anyone inflicted by greed and selfish motives. Was greed the reason why the relatives of the deceased felt the need to resurrect their dead loved ones? Yes, and that's why Lewis, Mr. Bateman, and so on met their fate, because they weren't willing to accept the laws of the universe. The Wendigo also cheated, constantly riling his victims to commit to him and make them commit errors. No one was selfish or greedy, but the Wendigo severely manipulated them into thinking that way and becoming reckless. The goal of the Wendigo was to constantly test his victims, whether they were ready to accept death and live on. Everything the Wendigo did, and all the scare tactics he used, were just a massive test for his victims. Trish, however, passed this test, because she was drawing her energy from her love for baseball and its popular pitcher Tom Gordon. She was so focused that the Wendigo's fear tactics didn't waver her from her target. Marvelous verdict. Stephen King's stories have always been a lesson in morality, mixing fantasy with realism. Wendigo feels like a nagging aunt holding a mirror to my face, constantly reminding me that the worst would happen. It felt like a poor cousin of death who was neglected as a child and was now out to fill up his ego by using humans as victims. Wendigo's appearance was so horrific that no one in their right frame of mind would befriend him, so this was the best tactic to get close to humans. Use fear and curse. Wendigo's secret of staying important was to show humans a small glimpse of how he had the power to revive the dead, which King used with finesse. My Grammy used to say, "I don't fear death, but I fear that I won't be able to see my loved ones." And I think that's true for me too. Missing your loved ones. I'm assuming you don't fear death too. Until next time, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.